All right, we are recording now. Once again, thank you everybody so much for joining us for this very, very important session. This is something that it is very important for you to think about as you are starting to expand your portfolio internationally, and that is legacy planning, specifically with Belize in mind. As you may have guessed, each country in the world does things a little bit differently. And when you're deciding to own property in Belize, it is so incredibly important that you do it right the first time. It can be very expensive. If you want to start changing things down the line after titles are already in hand, or after you already have some corporation set up, or you want to open a new company or trust. So it's important for you to dig down deeper into the details now. And that's why we have invited Deshawn Torres with us. Also with us today, we have Sarah Jung. Sarah is one of my good friends and a very avid real estate investor. She invests all around the globe. And I met her here in Belize, actually, and it was like a little networking event. It was a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and we got to talking and realized that we had a lot of very similar, interests and goals and motives, and really desires of what we want to see here on the island. So, with that being said, I've learned a lot from Sarah in the time that I've met her, and this was a topic that she and I were discussing about, that legacy planning, that we really wanted to share with everyone. So Sarah, I'm going to let you introduce Deshawn. You introduced me to her, so feel free to do the introductions here for everyone around us as well.
Thanks, Rachel. Well, hello, my name is Sarah Jung. I've been a longtime real estate investor, and I'm also a developer in Belize. And I've been investing in real estate all around the U.S. For many, many years, from residential rental properties to doing property flips to multifamily and development projects. And I started working down in Belize. That's where I met Rachel a few years ago, and we fell in love with the country and recognized all of the wonderful opportunities in Belize. And started working on some projects and doing some various investments down in Ambergris Caye specifically. And one of the things that has come up as over the years that I've worked as an investor, and I've also worked with a number of clients, investor clients, is about legacy planning. And I think this is a very important topic. And that's why I'm really, really excited that our friend Deshawn Torres decided to join us here, because we've had so many situations over years where investors or just people have bought properties and things have happened in life and loved ones have passed away and they did not have the proper planning in place. And it just happened very unexpectedly. And so it's always those situations where, they're scrambling around trying to figure out, not only are they mourning the loss of a loved one, but now they have to deal with all of the legal ramifications on what to do with their assets and their properties that have been left behind, and can create a very long and arduous road if things were not set up properly. So again, just a very important topic I really wanted to bring to everybody's attention, and very privileged and honored to have Mrs. Deshawn Torres with us today. She's been practicing down in Belize for several years, and she has also worked with us personally on our development projects as well as our other transactions. And so I can say that she's highly knowledgeable in this area. And so I can't wait to hear what she has to say about this topic. And so Deshawn, thank you so much for being with us. And if you could share a little bit more about yourself, and then we can get right into it.
All right, awesome. Thanks for that introduction, Sarah and Rachel, and for having me today. As they've said, my name is Deshawn Torres. I'm a practicing attorney in Belize. I've been practicing going on 18 years now. I may not look it, but it's been a while. I started off in the UK. I earned my bachelor's degree via the University of Liverpool. I moved on to Manchester Met to pursue the postgrad, and came back to Belize. It's home to me. Belize is the only country that I've lived in, born and raised. And so I moved to Belize City because this is the hub, in spite of what they say that it's Belmopan, it's still Belize City that most business takes place. And I started out practicing with Young's Law Firm. I was there for 10 years. And then I started off on my own. I opened my own practice in 2016, and that's where I've been since. I have a partner. We have an associate attorney who works alongside us, and it's been fantastic so far. I had mentioned to Sarah that I studied at Pepperdine. I had gotten my master's degree in dispute resolution sometime ago. And so that's an area of law that I absolutely love, to speak with persons and to see how we can resolve issues without resort to litigation. It can be quite expensive. And so that's pretty much who I am. I'm a wife, a mother, to two young boys who keep me going.
I love it. I love it. And what I'm going to do before we jump into the really good stuff is put up a quick poll. And this is one that I would love for everyone to participate in answering. It should pop up there on your screen. It says, do you already have a will? Single choice, no wrong answer. It is just completely up to you and what your situation is. But the first one is yes, with preparation of attorney. One is you prepared one on your own, but you know that it is legally valid. The third choice is you're strongly considering one. One is you don't want to think about it right now, but maybe later. And then the fifth choice is you're going to leave your family members to figure it out. But we'll give you just another 10 seconds. 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And we'll end the poll. And it looks like a majority of people do have a will prepared with an attorney. Fantastic. And then a couple people here are strongly considering one. So that's good. I'm glad to see no one's going to leave it to their family.
Exactly.
to get figured out. So just a quick update. What we're going to do is talk about legacy planning. Go into I have 5 questions that we prepared for Deshawn that have been commonly asked to me. And I'm sure, Sarah, you've heard these questions too when people are looking at real estate. So we're going to be going through that. We're going to go through an opportunity, a land gifting opportunity, which I think is a really unique way to practice what we learn, and then just have your live Q&A. And then again, just a reminder to add your questions to the Q&A section of the control panel, and then we'll be answering them afterwards. So with that, Deshawn, do you just want to give us a quick overview of, why this is really important? And then we can just jump into the questions.
Sure. Like I've said to you, to both of you ladies, it's extremely important to prepare. No one wants to speak about debt. No one wants to consider it really and truly. But the long and short of it is that it allows you to make sound decisions. It's going to reflect your values, importantly, your wishes. So you won't leave it to any family member to decide whether you wish for your gifting to be for a charitable purpose or a non-charitable purpose. You have the ultimate say so. So we always find parties may walk into our office and say, well, Deshawn, I have a U.S. will. It considers my assets in the U.S. I've recently purchased property in Belize. I may not want to deal with that at this stage. It may not be cost effective to speak with my attorneys in the U.S. about it. There's a myriad of reasons. Persons may say, well, I am considering a divorce, what to do in those circumstances. And so if you have assets, no matter what that asset is, even if it's jewelry, we say sometimes it could be a family heirloom, but prepare, plan accordingly, and ensure that it's reviewed by an attorney and it's confirmed to be valid, legal, and enforceable in the country in which you've prepared it.
Perfect. And so I'm going to just ask the first question here, and I think we know the answer, but it's, should I set up a will in Belize?
Yes, you should. As long as you have assets in the country, we certainly would highly recommend that. Persons may have corporations set up that holds the property. Persons may hold the property in a personal capacity. And so whatever the case is, prepare your will, set out your wishes. It's not expensive, it's cost effective to do so. And as I've shared with you before, even if you have a US will, so long as that US will contains a clause that states property situate wherever in the world, that includes Belize. And so you can take that US will, get it probated in the US, and you can bring it to Belize, and we also probate that will in the country. We have a specific term that would be utilized, but it can be probated here, relating specifically to just those Belize assets.
Got it. And then about the general, I know you said it was fairly inexpensive. About what is the cost to set up a will here in Belize? Let's say you own a piece of property and you want to put the property in the will.
It would, again, it just depends on the complexity. If it's
Sure.
just a piece of property or two, it shouldn't cost anything more than 500 US.
Oh, yeah, that is very
Mhm.
reasonable. Very really. And how long does that process take to set up a will?
You would have to be here in the country.
Okay.
That's one, because the will is going to be drafted. In the first instance, you would many times persons email, say, Deshawn, this is the intent. I'm toying with certain structures. It may take sometimes upwards of months to finalize a will. So it varies from party to party. Um, Once we agree or you dictate this is what is to be done, because I would be advising to say, yes, this is a distinct possibility, subject to the laws of Belize, etc., etc. Once I confirm, we have you come in to sign the will in the presence of two witnesses. That is extremely important. So if you're in the US, you can't provide instructions to me to say, well, Deshawn, I'll sign it in the US, FedEx the document to me, I'll sign it in the US, I'll return it to you, and it's witnessed in Belize. If the will is to be signed outside of the jurisdiction, we get very, very, very specific as to how it's to be done, because we don't want your will to be declared invalid. If there's a legal challenge, a witness may say, well, I recall signing that will, but Sarah wasn't present. I believe Rachel was a party to, and she was present, but I had gone to the store, and when I returned, she was not there. Immediately the court would deem that to be an invalid will if evidence comes before a court to that effect. You must both be present at the time the testator signs the will.
Interesting. Okay, that's good. I mean, I'm going to be learning a lot, I think, with everybody here on the session too. So that was a good tidbit. And then you mentioned probate. So what does the probate process look like in Belize? If, let's say there's two scenarios. One is somebody passes away and has a will, and the other is they pass away and don't have a will.
Okay, so scenario one, you have a will. You would submit your will to our attention saying, well, party X has passed, kindly proceed. We would examine the will to ensure that an executor is named. Once the executor is named, we make contact with that executor, because he or she, or if it's a company, would have to execute the relevant forms. So once those forms are all signed, the attesting witnesses to your will must also sign a form. So when we advise our clients to have witnesses present, we can't guarantee what's going to happen in the future. At times we find that a witness may have passed. Sometimes we can't find that witness. So it's best, generally through law firms, we can trace where those secretaries or where those paralegals have moved on to. If it's John Smith, Jane Doe, it's kind of harder to navigate how we could find that person. Sometimes a search happens for an extended period of time, because that's a critical part of it. One of your attesting witnesses must sign on to certain forms that will be filed for the probate process.
Got it. And then how long does it typically take to go through probate?
If we have a will and the will is being probated, it takes at least 6 to 8 weeks maximum.
Okay.
It used to be 4 weeks, but there's a lot of changes in the court in terms of administration, etc. So we simply advise clients it would be a 6 to 8 week process if it's a will.
And if there's no will?
If there's no will, then the Administration of Estates Act in Belize governs how your estate is going to be distributed. So that piece of legislation, let's say I'll utilize Sarah, for example. Sarah doesn't have a will, whether in the US or in Belize, and she leaves all these assets, which she knows she invests globally, but here in Belize. She has 10 acres of land in San Pedro, another 50 acres in Placencia. And who does it go to? Sarah may be married at the time. So if she's married, her husband is considered to be an issue of the estate, and so he would share it. Next question would be, did Sarah have children as at the date of her death? So if she dies leaving a husband and children, or a spouse and children, the husband or the spouse would receive 1/3 share, and the remaining 2/3 share goes to the children, right, in equal shares. So that's just a situation or a scenario where she's married, she has children. If she doesn't have children, then her estate absolutely passes to her spouse, right? If it's a situation where she has minor children, then that spills into further considerations, because a minor is involved and you did not leave a will setting out who would be the guardian of your child or children, right? So in that case, you would have to then have 2 persons appointed to administer on behalf of the minor. So it would be Sarah's partner together with some other person that he elects to act together with him, because our laws says as long as minors are beneficiaries or stand to benefit, there must be 2 or more persons responsible for the management on behalf of that minor child or children.
That makes sense. And what if there's no heir? Like, what if there's no spouse or no children?
Then the act, it does specify there's an extended listing that we go through to determine who the issue would be or who the next of kin. So if there's no husband, no children, then we look at parents. If there's no parents, then we look at siblings. And then it continues that way down to the closest family member that may be that's alive at that time.
Got it. And this is probably a good reason to tell family members too about what you're doing, right? At least the ones that you like. Tell them
Exactly.
that you're doing. I mean, obviously
Exactly.
the will first and foremost, right? But if you don't get to that point, at least let people know so that the property just doesn't. I mean, what happens in that case, right? If there's nobody that's found, or
then it goes to the government. It passes to the crown.
Okay.
It passes to the crown.
Oh, got it. Got it. Yeah. So definitely let somebody know that you care about.
Yes. And I didn't mention, but wills, Belize wills aren't recorded. So there's no repository. So it's not, let's say party X passes, they can't conduct a search at the registry to see if a will was registered. So that's another issue that we find. So it's, again, very important that you say to your executors or your family members, I left the will, it's entrusted to party A, the will is going to be read at the appropriate time. I'm just making you aware, and especially for your executor who acts as your trustee, that person knows what he or she or the company is really setting itself up to do, because some executors find that, well, this is a bit too much and I'm not being paid because it's free. Executors don't charge or not to charge. So if they find that it's a bit much, sometimes they just don't do anything. And the beneficiaries would then have to approach the courts to enforce the will and really force them to act.
Got it. And do people need to be in Belize in person to go through probate, or is that something that you can do with people all through the internet and Zoom and whatnot?
Exactly. You would just instruct accordingly. The paperwork would be prepared. We have parties sign accordingly. Those would be sent if it's abroad. We give specific instructions on signing of those forms, sometimes in the presence of a notary public, etc.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. And something that we've seen quite a bit is if somebody doesn't open up a corporation, but they're investing in property or owning property with their spouse or with another person, is there joint tenancy of survivorship? What happens in the case that the other person on the title passes away?
So we have two systems that are utilized in Belize, which would be the tenancy in common or the joint tenancy, which carries the right of survivorship. It has to be specifically noted on the register and on the land instrument itself. So registered land, you'd have a land certificate. And if you're holding property jointly, that form does make provision for you to really highlight to say whether it's being held in common or joint tenancy. So if you fail to highlight jointly, it's automatic that it's then a tenancy in common and the right of survivorship would not apply. So if I see a land certificate and it has jointly, if party X passes, then automatically they become the owner of the entire piece or parcel of land.
And then is it, if it doesn't say jointly, what would the other word be then if it's not?
It's a tenancy in common.
Tenancy in common. Okay, so
Correct.
tenancy in common, it doesn't get passed to the other person automatically.
No, you'll have to go through the
Got it.
probate process or whether it's administration process.
Got it. Yeah, got it. That makes a lot of sense. And you know, that is something too, then that's going to be important for folks that are listening as you are going through the titling process to make sure it is very clear to your, you know, to Deshawn, to the closing company that you want it to be set up either, you know, jointly or say it one more time. What is it in common?
Tenancy in common.
Tenancy in common, tenancy in
And
common.
we find it a lot with spouses that if I'm to hold a piece of property with my husband, I may place on that title request jointly so that I won't pay stamp duty costs to effect a transfer. If it's tenancy in common, if it's inter vivos during our lifetime or after passing. So we look at the specific situation and we advise accordingly.
Oh, interesting. So if it is tenancy in common, so there's not the survivors, it's not held jointly, right? Then
Correct.
to get the person off. So let's say, you know, my partner's name is Ivan. Let's say Ivan and I hold the property together. I pass away. He needs to get my name off of it because it's just tenancy in common. Then he has to reissue a new land certificate and he has to pay the stamp costs again.
Correct. But if it's via the estate process, you won't pay stamp duties.
Okay.
You won't pay stamp duties at the time of passing. If you're doing it during your lifetime, certainly you would pay on your half interest.
Got it. Okay, got it. That makes sense. Again, very important to people because stamp taxes can get expensive.
Yes.
You know, it's about 8%. They valued it for foreigners is 8%. So you want to, of the land value. So you want to make sure it's done properly. And this comes, you know, this does come to the next question that we get quite a bit is how should I title a property in Belize with the intent of leaving it to my kids?
It again varies party to party. You can leave it in a corporation, you can issue shares to those minors, but you would have a trustee named because minors again are unable to handle their own legal affairs or inheritances. You have to have a trustee named if a minor is to benefit. So it can be a corporation, it could be a transfer, but a trustee has to be named. You're holding that property on trust for the minor child.
Got it. And I know, so, and I just do want to share this disclaimer. Hopefully everyone read it there at the bottom is what we're talking about is just, you know, blanket information. I know that so many people have very specific, you know, situations. So this isn't meant to be a one size fits all, right? It's just answering very generally the questions. And then of course, if you do have really specific questions, please do reach out to Deshawn privately. We're going to have her email address at the end of the session here where you can, I think it's just Deshawn at
mybelizeattorney.com.
Yeah, there we go. I'll just share it right now while we're talking about Deshawn at mybelizeattorney.com. Just jot her email address down there so that you're able to reach out to her about your specific situation. And then I do have one more question that has been commonly asked to us is what if I want to change the title name to my company from my personal name? So let's say I purchased this property under Rachel Jensen, but you know, I recently had a kid and I want to make sure I'm doing the proper estate planning. I want to transfer the property from my Rachel Jensen name to, you know, company ABC 123 Limited that later on down the line, my kid can inherit. What what would that process look like? What fees would be involved with that?
You'll be paying stamp duty at the standard 5 or 8%, depending on nationality. So it is best that you prepare a will and you would leave that asset, and your child would avoid paying any stamp duty, any stamp tax.
Got it.
Right? So the will would be the best bet in the scenario that you just described.
Perfect. And that is such good information right there. That is like, I think, worth $1 million in itself, because folks do remember, we just mentioned this with the stamp tax, it's either 5% if you're a Belizean, or I think it's a CARICOM.
Correct,
Right?
and nationals as well.
Or 8% if you're a foreigner that's not part of CARICOM or Belize. So when they're reevaluating, the lands department is looking at the reevaluation, and they're going to be transferring the title from one name to another. They're going to be valuing the land at that current price, not what was paid for. It's going to be at that current value. So it could be 5 to 8%, just depending on your nationality, of what that person would have to pay. So that is so valuable right there. Is setting up that will would help prevent that 5 or 8% that heir would pay. And I understood that correctly, right? I just want to make sure.
Yes, that is correct. It is.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, this was good. These are the top 5 questions that I've received, at least from being in the real estate side and from people who are looking at real estate in Belize. Obviously, folks, if you have other questions, please do type that into the Q&A section. We're going to be talking about getting those answers for you. But I know that we do have a couple of more slides here for you, Deshawn, and we really did cover this. But is there anything else you want to add to this question here?
Why is it important to designate your beneficiary and leave a will? So we insist that beneficiary designation, it's extremely important. You're dictating the pace. You dictate what's to happen after you pass. Many times you have children, you have other family members, you may have had a certain plan in mind, or there's a certain intent. But because you don't leave a manager named, your legacy just diminishes or it depletes. And you may have been working towards building a legacy for your generations, for it to carry on. So we continue to impress, whether it's a life insurance situation, whether you simply are planning prudently and you have a will, constantly or from time to time, review your document. Situations changes, life happens, and we impress again that when you elect not only beneficiaries, or you appoint beneficiaries, but when you elect your trustee, being your administrator, that executor, that you look at certain characteristics, which we always highlight to our clients. We want that person to be honest, trustworthy, that they're prudent investors. They won't take your asset and make poor investment decisions, that they're organized, that they can problem solve, that they can communicate well. That's extremely important. That they're maintain the principles of confidentiality. They're loyal to you. You know that there's not going to be any conflict of interest situation with that person you appoint, because you want to ensure that your beneficiary receives the gifting in the form that you intended. So that if I'm to leave my jewelry, it's not going to be that trustee is going to be seen wearing that jewelry, that trustee is going to pawn that jewelry or pawn your land or sell it to someone. It's not only the beneficiary appointment, it's also who you choose to trust with your business and your affairs.
I love it. That makes a lot of sense here. Any last words on this topic? Otherwise, we'll jump into a quick opportunity. I think that folks would be interested.
I have a really quick question. I just want to jump in. This might tie into one of the questions that we got from one of our attendees. As just, so I hear you talking. We're talking about a will. What is the difference with the will versus a trust? So, common for us to set up a U.S. trust.
Mhm.
and a will. Can you shed some light on that, kind of the differentiation, or is there a difference for
There is a
Belize?
difference. The trust must be registered, whether it's a domestic or whether it's an international trust. The life of the trust is 120 years. You would be naming your settler. That's the person who is making the gift, your trustee, and your beneficiary. Again, it's very confidential. You'll be registering that trust. It's going to be housed with the registrar of trusts. Um, you're avoiding paying taxes and duties. Because it's confidential, again, your asset holding would not, no one would be privy to that information, save and except your settler, as the settler and the trustee and the registrar, him or herself. Right, so that's a specific repository that deed of trust is registered at and with the registrar, and there's filing fees, there's registration fees, and there must be a trust agent appointed on your behalf to register that trust.
And is there a situation where somebody would do a trust versus a will?
Yes, many times.
Mm.
Persons who prepare trusts generally have a multiplicity of assets throughout the world per se, so that when you're registering it in Belize, you're referencing the asset you have here, but that trust may also have properties in Dubai, in Bali, in the US, and so it's a better fit for them that you have one instrument which governs your entire affairs, as opposed to maybe that particular jurisdiction may not recognize that will being registered in Belize. We've had some situations where we're unable possibly to use a will from another country, not the US, not the UK, because those are all recognized. So we advise clients accordingly based on their situation and needs. But we do
Okay.
have quite a bit of deed of trust registered. The will is very simplistic, and it's way cheaper.
Got it, yeah.
Good to know. Thank you.
A very good question. All right, and feel free, folks, to type into the Q&A section where if you have any questions. I do see some coming in. So I'm going to just go through a couple more slides and then we'll get through Q&A at the end, but just find that section if you do want to add your questions in here. All right, so this is a topic that I did want to bring up because we are coming into the holiday season right now, and we see a lot of people who are looking to do something for their kids or their grandkids that's meaningful. You know, that latest trend in toy, and it's going to be cool today and then gone next year. And so if you are looking for something that is more long lasting, something that is going to produce something down the line that's going to appreciate without having to think about it, this is honestly something I wish that my parents did for me when we were younger, or my grandparents. But you know, I'm gonna be that generation that does it, is gifting land to your loved ones this holiday season. And there is this project specifically, Sarah's project called Platinum Point. This is located in the Path of Progress. I think many of you know that I've been here in Belize for 12 years. This is my home. This is where we practice real estate. On the board of realtors, and I see that this is just one of the best opportunities on the market today, especially if you're looking for something entry priced in the Path of Progress on Ambergris Caye, specifically 8.5 miles north. But what I like that Sarah and her group have been offering is seller financing. It's very difficult to find seller financing here for foreigners in the country, and the area that this property is in, it's about, like I said, 8.5 miles north. It's about a 35 to 40-minute golf cart ride in the northward direction. But as you can see on the map on the right-hand side, it's in just an incredible location, the area that is being referred to as Newtown. There's a police station already there. There are dozens of homes that have popped up over the last couple of years because Ambergris Caye has really become so dense and it has become congested in downtown proper. What we're seeing is the progress is happening in that northward direction, and in town there's nowhere for people to go, so it's happening north. And so, you know, the government has allocated this land within this Newtown area for locals, for the next community, for the next town to really take shape. And we're starting to see that And this is the only subdivision in that area that really makes sense for people who are looking from the investment perspective. And who knows, maybe it's for you, or maybe your kid or grandkid down the line after you gift it to them finds out about it and they end up building a house down here and living in Belize. I mean, there's so many possibilities. And so this is one that we just wanted to bring up for the holiday season. That's for the holiday season here. And so in total, there are 60 lots at this point. We are on phase 2, and phase 2 has a few more lots remaining, but we have had quite a bit of sales lately. I would say if you're somebody who's interested in this, you want maybe a corner lot, or, you know, pick your grandkid or your kid's favorite number and choose that lot. But with the financing, I think it makes it a lot more attainable for people who don't necessarily want to put 100% down, or are in that financial position where, you know, about 27 will right up to 28,000 down in monthly payments over a 5-year term of, let's say, less than $560. You can essentially gift this to your kid, your grandkid, however it is that you want to set it up. If you want to do this for yourself, you can do it through an investment IRA and self-directed IRA, LLC, or you can put it in the name of your loved one, or like Deshawn was saying, you can put it in a company, and then at your passing, or whenever you want to delineate those shares to who you want the recipient to be, you can do that as well. But it's just an opportunity that was too good to not share. So I just wanted to bring that up here. And then, of course, what I would recommend is talk to Deshawn about how to title it, how to set up that structure to make sure that you're doing it the best way possible for your situation and for your loved one. So if anyone is interested, please do reach out to, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me through my email, rjensen@lunarealtybelize.com, or just reply back to the webinar invitation. So that was my PSA for the session here. But what I really want to do is jump into, here's our email addresses here to reach out to Deshawn and me for any questions. What I really want to do is jump into the Q&A section. And that's what we have. So Craig, it's nice to see you back, Craig. So Craig said, can you put property into a U.S. trust? That's for you, Deshawn.
Yes. Yes, you can. Certainly.
Perfect. And this one, it may be a bit specific, but Ronald is saying, is it better to use a U.S. LLC or a Belize LLC to purchase a property? Are there any advantages of one over the other?
There's absolutely none. Because the same stamp duty considerations apply. Many times persons would inquire, well, if I form a Belize corporation, would the 5% stamp tax then be applicable? No, because you'll have to get central bank approval, you have to provide IDs, and you would show you're not a Belize national. So there's no difference whether you use your US LLC or a Belize entity.
And I will say, the one consideration that you may need to bear in mind is if you are using a foreign LLC, so meaning a non-Belizean LLC, so let's say US for the case of this conversation, then you do have to register that company to do business in Belize. So then it would be considered, Belizean company once you register it to do business. So there may be some additional fees for having a US company own it. But I know many clients, especially if they're using their self-directed IRA LLC, it really makes sense for it to be US. So it really just makes sense, I think, for you to talk to your local CPA, and then of course, accountant, and then of course, Deshawn, and together you can come up with a strategy, Ronald, that makes sense for your specific situation.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Nepal, for some reason I always forget to put this into the presentation, but he's asking how big is the lot? We have 2 lot sizes, and they range from about 5,500 to about 5,800 square feet. What we've also seen investors do is they'll pick up 2 side-by-side lots, adjacent lots, because resales of adjacent lots tend to be more popular than single one-offs, but one-offs are great as well. This is an area that personally I see a lot of potential for appreciation. And you'd want to hold on to it for, I'd say, at least 3 to 5 years, But if you're gifting it to a kid or grandkid, that's even better, because then they can hold on for a little bit more. And how I see it too, I just had a son, Deshawn. Well, I say he's a year old now, but it feels like It feels like it was yesterday. And, you know, just think about the times as he gets older. And you said you have 2 boys, right, yourself, right? Like as they
Yes.
get older, you know, being able to have this land that maybe they didn't even know was there, but as they have big life events coming up, you know, like as they're buying a house, well, they can liquidate the property and use that to buy their own home or whatever, you know, whatever their big purchases are. But it's neat to be able to do that for family members and the ones you love. All right, let's see. More questions. Anyone have any other questions that they want to get answered for Deshawn? Sarah, anything else too that you think is important for folks as they're looking at either property overseas? Because you're an international real estate investor as well. You know, you've been in the shoes of a lot of these people before.
Absolutely. And, you know, we have gone through our own personal structuring of our estate with our trust. I mean, we have a total of 6 kids. So, and they're all adults, but if anything happens to Calera, you know, we have, you know, quite a bit that we have to, you know, work through. So, making sure that all of our 6 kids are taken care of. And, you know, being that we own quite a bit of property here in the States, but also quite a bit of property now in Belize, this topic is very important. I don't have any questions at this time, but Deshawn, I mean, this was actually very informative for me personally. It kind of gets my wheels turning about things that other things I need to be taking care of now. So thank you for that. So I appreciate it, and definitely learned a lot just here in the last 30 minutes.
Yeah, this was good. You know, I can always come up with more questions. I'm not going to keep everyone on until 10 o'clock tonight. I promise. I probably could, but I'm not going to do that to all of you. I know you have dinner and everything you need to get to. But what about if somebody has a bank account here in Belize? Is that something they can also put into the will? Or
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. I was to mention that money is whatever it is of value. Bank accounts are listed. Life insurance policies are subject to the life insurance contract. And so there is generally a beneficiary designation form. But many times we find that parties may not, again, in the case of minors, designate who the trustee would be. And so it falls to their estate. So who again is going to manage those monies? We have $1 million policies, we have $100,000 policies, but many times we find that it's $1 million policies that are left to an estate, and then naming administrators can prove problematic. We see it time and time again. So it's best, even in your will, if one is being prepared, we ask about life insurance policies. We ask generally for a listing of all assets we specify on our will preparation checklist for clients to go through with a fine-tooth comb. And we have a sit down. Yesterday, I met with a husband and wife. They said, we have 5 kids. One is already on his own. The wife forgot a property that she held, saying, you know what? I need to pull back a bit because I need to redesignate. I want to ensure, just as you said, Rachel, that all my children, as Sarah said, I want to ensure all my children are taken care of to a certain degree. And so whether it's money, whether it's heirlooms, whether it's stocks, shares, bonds, whatever it is, it can be listed and noted in your will.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Well, Deshawn, I know I will personally be reaching out to you, and hopefully folks, you know, if you are looking at property here in Belize and you haven't yet pulled the trigger, get in touch with Deshawn before you do that, because you want to make sure that you're setting it up properly. I know I learned the hard way about restructuring and retitling and having to repay stamp taxes because I didn't think it through properly when I first purchased. So expensive mistake that I don't want any of you to have to make. But talk to Deshawn, and then if you already do have property here and you're trying to, you know, get the will established or whatnot, even if you don't have kids or grandkids, you know, you probably have a good friend or, you know, some neighbor that you think would benefit from the purchase. You don't want to going back to the government. They got enough, you know, they got enough.
Exactly.
Gift it out to someone. Well, perfect, ladies. Before we off here, go ahead. Any last comments you want to add?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel and Deshawn. And one thing that I want to notice, so Deshawn is available to any of the property that you'd be willing to interested in buying in Belize. Rachel and Deshawn can help you both. They have such a great team, and I can't say more about them both because they do such a great job for all of my clients. So appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks as well, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thanks everybody once again for joining us. We will of course send out the recording afterwards. And if you have any other questions that were not answered during this, of course, feel free to reach out to us. And we look forward to seeing you in Belize here at some point. Bye, everyone.